few years ago, Lindsay and I had the opportunity to go to Disney World. Has anybody ever had the opportunity to go to the happiest place in the world? It might be the only place in the world that you spend $15 on a bottle of water and still be happy, right? But it is. It's a great place. It's fun. It's our kids love it. Even if they're like little, they still think about it and talk about it. You can go on YouTube and watch little videos. People make videos of what Disney World's like and the roller coasters. And I think one of my favorite pastimes is tricking our kids into a roller coaster at Disney World. We took our son Dalen, he's 8 years old, and somehow we talked him into the Tower of Terror. Did not go well. And so he's not a risk taker. He's very safe. Everything's got to be safe. And about halfway in the line, he was like, I don't think I'm going to do this. I was like, too late, buddy. You're on it. All right. And halfway through the ride, I thought my arm was going to fall off from him pulling on it and squeezing it and screaming. But anyways, Disney World, we were there. We got there. We traveled all day, what it felt like all day. And we finally get to the hotel. And we get to the hotel, and the bathroom's dirty. Who would ever think, right? You get to the hotel, and the bathroom's dirty. And so being the king and the queen that Lindsay and I are, we are like, we're calling the front desk. We're not going to have this, all right? And so we call the front desk. I say that jokingly. We were very nice about it, and we're not high maintenance. At least I don't think that we are. But we call the front desk, and we say, hey, just letting you know the bathroom's really not clean. And so they apologize profusely. And within what felt like minutes, there was a cleaning lady there cleaning the bathroom, like deep cleaning the bathroom. And she cleaned for quite a while. And after she cleaned, she said, would you please come inspect the bathroom to make sure it's up to your standards? And I'm like, that's what I'm talking. I need this kind of stuff in my life right now, right? And so I go to the bathroom, and we're looking over. It looks great, and we're thank you so much. And so we left that moment like, wow, like they have great customer service. Like we were wow. They didn't have to do anything else after that. We were just impressed. But a few minutes later, as we're getting ready for bed, we heard a knock on the door, and I'm like, okay, what is it now? You go to the door, and the manager of the whole hotel is at our door. And he's got this letter of apology, and he's apologizing to us in person, and then he has age-appropriate gifts for all of our kids. Y'all think I'm making up a story? It's not. It's true. Disney World has probably, if not the best hospitality and customer service in the world. So much so that companies spend thousands of dollars to send their employees to Disney. I say that weird. Lindsay says I say Disney. It's Disney. I apologize, all right? Can't say it. But they send them to the Disney Institute. And you can learn their customer service and how they do things and how well things are run. I mean, we left that trip like, wow, these people really care about people that are coming into their resort. All while spending a lot of money on gifts and toys and waters and food. And you don't even think about it because the customer service is so, you think about it when you come back, But when you're there, you don't as much. Let's think of another hospitality example, Chick-fil-A. Anybody go to Chick-fil-A? I think we pay the light bill at the one in Magnolia pretty often every month. And so we like Chick-fil-A, and the food's great, and that's not really the whole reason. It's because their customer service is so good. Compare Chick-fil-A to any other fast food restaurant, right? If you go to Chick-fil-A and your order's wrong, they're going to come sprinting out of the door, out the parking lot. They're going to give you a salvation altar call, baptize you, and then give you the correct food, right? They just have great customer service. And it's like, wow, these people really care. Now, I would say this, that hospitality matters. How we treat others matter in our world. And I would say it matters way much more as how we treat others as believers than what happens at Disney World or at Chick-fil-A. And so we started a new series last week titled DNA, where we're talking about the core values of Collective Church, of who we are and what we're going to be about. And our hope is that you'll have a really clear understanding of who Collective Church is after this series is over. But our prayer is that you end up calling Collective your home after this series, because you will understand what we're passionate about, and where we're going, and where we're headed. And so last week we talked about core value number 1 is contagious grace. This week is core value number 2, captivating hospitality. Captivating hospitality. I want to give you definitions so we have a working understanding of what we're talking about. The friendly and generous reception of and entertainment of guests, visitors, or strangers. The friendly or generous reception and entertainment of guests, visitors, or strangers. Now, we aren't here to entertain people. That's not why we are here. I'm sure that you can go a lot of places where you can get entertained. There's a lot of concerts that happen in our area and in our city. There's shows that you can go to and ballet and music and all the things that you can do to be entertained. So we're not here to entertain people. That's not the point of why we're gathering. We are purposefully simple with what we do here at Collective. We will probably never do something that you're going to leave and like, wow, I've never seen that before. Because that's not what we're desiring to do. We want to put all of our focus and our attention on Jesus. So we're not here to entertain, but we are here at church. We do care about how we make people feel when they come through our doors. We care about people as we're in our community. We care about how we make people feel. And so we're going to be in Romans chapter 12 today. If you have your Bibles, if not, it'll be on the screen as well. Romans chapter 12. We're going to do verses 9 through 16. Paul says, let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with a brotherly affection and outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit and serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer and contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another, and do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. We're going to stop at verse 16 there. Paul is writing this letter to believers in Rome, and Rome was a mega city, so to speak, of the time. Had around 1 million people in a 10 square mile section of land, in this large population of people where sin and sexual sin were rampant and really prevalent in the culture. And so Paul's writing this letter, and he said, listen, you as the church, this is how I want you to respond to people in your world. To give you a little context of what Paul's writing here and who he's talking to, it's very applicable to our life and our world today. And so verse 9, he says, let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. And really, this passage is structured interesting because verses 9 through 13 in the Greek are one sentence that Paul's just writing out. Love, hate, let love be genuine, hate what is evil. And he writes verses 9 through 13 in one sentence. And really the entire passage hinges on the first part of this verse where he says, let love be genuine. Let love be genuine. I believe it's twofold. That our actions as believers and followers of Jesus are an overflow of our relationship with Jesus. How we respond to situations, how we live our life really is an overflow of who we are in our relationship with Jesus. We talked about this a little bit on Wednesday night, about the importance of spending time in the Word and spending time in the Scriptures. There's an old saying that says, after one day of not being in the Word, I can tell. After 2 days, my wife can tell. And after 3, everybody can tell. Because it's important that we are filling ourselves up with the Word of God because everything that we do is an overflow of our relationship with Him. So it said, let love be genuine, and it's an overflow. And so we don't love out of duty. We don't love because we are supposed to. We love because it's an overflow of who we are. It's coming out of us naturally. And so if we don't do that, if we're out of duty, our efforts are going to fail. It's going to become dull, and we're going to become uninterested. Some translations will even say, let love be without hypocrisy. It's really a theater term where it talks about speaking from behind a mask. You think about the actions of a believer, if we are to be following Jesus and on this journey of getting to know Him better and becoming more and more like Him, the process of sanctification from salvation until the time that either Jesus returns or we make it to heaven. From that point on, there's this journey of becoming like Him. And as we do that sure does not sound like something that we should do as we're speaking from behind a mask. Really, it's interesting because we learn this at a very young age. You think about if you're parents or if you have kids or if when you were a child. If you were to do something and you do it with the wrong attitude, guess what's going to happen? Your parents correct you. Right? Your parents say, hey, that's not how we do things. You're going to do it this way. We want you to have the right attitude about it. But somewhere along the line, we end up learning how to live behind a mask, and we do it really well. A lot of us, and I think we could all take off some masks and layers off of our face and saying, like, I'm no longer going to respond like this. I'm no longer going to speak out of both sides of my mouth or from behind a mask, but I'm going to lay it down because I want to be genuine without hypocrisy in my love. Hypocrisy is deceitfulness or dishonesty, which should never be words that describe a follower of Jesus. And then he says abhor, which is like hate. It's a strong dislike. It says hate evil. And so we see this kind of language used often throughout the scriptures when we talk about evil and sin. Sin is never mentioned lightheartedly in the Bible. It's always strong and with the weight and with the reality. It's sobering when we think about it. But Psalms chapter 97, verse 10, it'll be on the screen, says this: "Oh, you who love the Lord, hate evil. He preserves the lives of his saints. He delivers them from the hand of the wicked." As believers in Jesus, we should never be surprised, or we should always be surprised at sin. But a lot of times we are more surprised at the consequences of sin than the sin itself. I mean, think about parenting relates so well to who we are as believers. Your kids, even if you don't have kids, as you were a kid, we can be surprised when we get in trouble. Like, I can't believe that I got in trouble. Well, you didn't do it right. You didn't respond right. We get more surprised at the consequences of sin rather than the sin itself. And so, yes, we're under grace, the new covenant, but as believers in Jesus, I would just encourage us and challenge us. We should never be comfortable with living in sin. We are under grace. This is not a message of judgment, but it is a message that we will never be disappointed in our relationship by living a life that is righteous. Yes, our righteousness is as filthy rags, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to mess up. We're going to do it daily, more than likely. But we should never be comfortable just living and staying in that sin that we're in. So he said, let love be genuine, abhor, hate what is evil. But here's what he says. He says, hold fast to what is good. Hold fast to what is good. In this line, it carries the meaning of being glued to. You get this picture in our minds for a moment. He's saying, hate and run away from what is evil, but be glued to, stick to what is good. You see the difference that Paul is talking about here is like, you have evil over here. We should run from it. We should hate it, abhor it, but we should cling to, be stuck to, be glued to what is good. There's power in those words. Verse 10, he says, love one another with a brotherly affection and outdo one another in showing honor. Now, this phrase, brotherly affection, is a compound word. It comes from two different Greek words, phileo love, which is a brotherly love, and then storge love, which is a familial love. So it's similar, but when you compound them, it has a little bit more weight and a little bit more power. Think back to when you were a kid growing up, and if you have, anybody have siblings in here? Anybody have siblings? You can raise your hand. It's okay. If you have a sibling, it looks like from the outside, but not all families get along when the doors are closed and it's just them, right? You could have had a moment in a time where you were so frustrated and mad at your sibling. You'd been fighting all day, you're angry, you're ready to ready to put the boxing gloves on, like, let's go out in the yard right now. But what happens if somebody from outside of your family comes and messes with your sibling? You defend your sibling. Like, in the natural mind, you would think, yeah, I don't have to beat him up. You beat him up. Go for it. But that's not what happens, because we automatically were like, no, that's my sibling. I have this familial love. There's something in me that is caring for that person. It does whatever it takes. It's a combination of words, brotherly love and familial love, that you get a protective and care deeply for those. Get a protective love and then care deeply for those around you. And how much could we use this in our world today, in our churches today? Outdo one another in showing honor. Are we quick to think of ourselves? I know I am. Are we quick to put the spotlight on ourselves? Or in your workplace, if somebody gets honored for doing something in your workplace, are you the first person in your mind that says, I did better than them, I should be getting recognized? See, what happens is we end up putting a spotlight on ourselves, and we live a life that's self-centered a lot of times. And so we have to be willing to push outside of ourselves, say, listen, life is not about me anymore. Because we like comfort and we like things to be the way that we like them. I mean, think about it. You go to somebody's house and spend the night, you quickly realize how different you are than them just by the decision of the pillows that they use on their bed. Right? You like a certain kind of pillow, and you're like, who could sleep with this brick under my head, right? We are all different, but we try to live our lives in comfort, and what that ends up doing is feeding this self-centeredness inside of us. So he's saying, listen, outdo one another in honor. Our life as a follower of Jesus should not be focused on ourselves, but how we can honor others and put others in front of ourselves. In verse 11, he says, do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord and rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation and be constant in prayer. This first line, do not be slothful in zeal, this is a do not lag behind in diligence. Do what you are supposed to do as a believer, is what Paul's saying. How do we do that? We do it when we are motivated by love and not by duty. If we are motivated by love, it becomes natural in us to serve others, to outdo one another, to be a part of that kind of community. If we're motivated in love, we'll see the zeal in our lives. That's why I keep saying the word duty. You see that in marriage. You do it out of love. You serve your spouse out of love, not out of duty, because we're married. You do it because you love your spouse. You serve them. And then in turn, we become passionate about it. We have zeal. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have ever had the joy or treat of being around or coaching t-ball, but it is a joy. You should do it. Even if you never have kids, sign up to go help t-ball. It is like the funniest thing in the world. What does slothful and zeal look like from a t-baller's perspective? I want to show you a quick video. That's a really good picture of what being slothful and zeal looks like as a believer. And the person in the red is Paul writing to us saying, don't be slothful, go. Well, what do? We will be reluctant at times. He's saying, listen, be passionate. Don't be slow. Don't lazily go towards this. Be passionate towards serving your community and the people around you. Verse 13, it says, contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. The Greek word here is a verb titled koinonia. There's a church right up the road, if you've seen the billboard. Right over here, it's a newer church within the last couple of years. Have a billboard on the side there, koinonia. It's community, it's relationship. And Paul uses this really in various ways, meaning fellowship in the gospel and fellowship in meeting each other's physical needs. The point of it is this, is that we are called to work hard and to not be slothful, but to seek and to pursue. And here's the meat of the passage today, and what I hope that you walk away with today. Core value number 2, captivating hospitality. Seek to practice hospitality. Some translations will say pursue hospitality. Pursue hospitality. Why would we use the word captivating when it comes to hospitality? Because when we are welcoming and loving and gracious to people that nobody else will be welcoming and gracious to, it speaks something to our world. There's something different about it. I'm going to broad stroke a little bit, but I would imagine most of us in the room can be hospitable if we know someone's coming over, right? We're going to clean the house. We're going to get prepped. We're going to make sure they have what they need. We're ready for them. If your family's coming in town or friends and you're prepping for that moment. You may even be willing to host an event at your house. If we ask you, hey, we're looking for a place to host something, can we come into your house? You're going to be hospitable. You're going to welcome at the door. You're going to be excited and all the things, right? You're going to put your face on and be ready to go. How many of us are pursuing hospitality? Seek to pursue hospitality. Go after hospitality. Why would we use the word captivating? Because I believe and we believe that when we do this, when we live this kind of life of hospitality, that we are loving and gracious and welcoming those that are coming through our doors, welcoming those that are our neighbors that do not know Jesus, being hospitable towards people that are even angry at the church. When we do that, it speaks something to our world. Comes to people walking through our doors here at the church, we want people to be taken back by the love and the greeting that they get. Not to embarrass people. That's not the point. For some of you that are introverts, you might walk up to the door and you would be so happy if you could wear dark colored glasses and nobody say anything to you. You're like, just going into church, leave me alone. But we want you to be welcomed. We want you to walk in like, these people care about us, because we do. It's not something we don't want to just preach it. We want to genuinely care, and we do genuinely care about people that are walking through our doors, and not just that, people that are in our community. Now, a church that greets people that look different than us, believe differently than us, that's what we're seeking. I had a conversation with some friends a couple of nights ago, and just thinking through how do we respond if people walk through our doors that believe totally different than us? I would hope and I would pray that we'd be so loving and welcoming. It doesn't matter who they are, what lifestyle they have, what they've gone through, what sin they have, that we would welcome them with open arms. Because if I recall back to my salvation, I don't remember people telling me I had to get my stuff together before I came to Jesus. And I don't ever want people to feel like that they have to do that same thing again. I want to embrace people for the mission that Jesus has sent us on. I want to skip down for sake of time to verse 16. He says, live in harmony with one another and do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. And never be wise in your own sight. To live in harmony with one another, we have to be willing to put others before ourselves. Which takes discipline. It takes a life of selflessness, right? I always say to people that are getting married, you might not think that you're selfish until you get married. And you realize quickly how many things that you like to do that your spouse may not like to do, right? And there's this period of time that as you first get married, you're trying to figure all this thing out. That's like you're not doing poker night 5 nights out of the week anymore. Right? You spend time with your spouse, you love them, you're with them, you're around them, there's that process of finding out, wow, I do a lot of stuff for myself. Still am sometimes, but I was a jerk when we first got married, because I wanted to do nothing but play basketball. Community to me was excuse me. Hey, let's go to the basketball court. You can watch me play and you can cheer me on. You learn, right? You learn that selfishness that you have inside of you. We all have it. But it takes us to be selfless if we're going to put others before, if we're going to live in harmony with one another. And I love the line that says this, associate with the lowly. It was probably easier in Paul's day to notice who was the lowly, cultural norms and things that we don't really have as much in our world today. We're really good at hiding who's the lowly and who's not. But in our time, to associate, and don't be afraid to associate with those that others won't. That have been rejected, ostracized from our culture, told that the church is not welcoming towards them. That should be the mark of a believer. What ends up happening over time, though, as we are following Jesus, a lot of times we will end up putting ourselves in a Christian bubble inadvertently, like not even trying to, that over time, because you know more and more Christians, you know more and more believers, and you end up surrounding yourself with nothing but believers. I remember the first time that we resigned from our position as youth pastors and I worked in the restaurant business. There's a lot of people in the restaurant business that need Jesus, by the way. But when I first went out of the church world, where all my life was surrounded by nothing but Christians and churches and pastors and ministers, like that was my world. And I walked into this world where people have no concept at times of what church. I even had a gentleman come up to me and he said, "So I hear you're building a church." I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "So like, are you doing that through like Habitat for Humanity, or like how are you doing that?" Like when he thought church, he was thinking like, you're just going to build a building. And it turned into a great conversation that, listen, it's much more. Church is not a building. And I was able to walk with him and show him a little bit of what that looks like. And you start to get outside of your Christian bubble, right? You do that at work. You start to see the darkness in people's hearts and minds and how they live and all the things that go on in their world. We insulate ourselves. We come home from work in the suburbs. We get home late because we're traveling. We pull in the garage. We shut the garage and we spend time with our family, which is important. And I'm not saying that we don't do that. All while our neighbors have a desperate need to see what a great example of a follower of Christ looks like. We have the opportunity to be welcoming and hospitable towards them. I encourage you, bring people into your home. Have dinner with them, invite them over, invite them to church, be hospitable towards people. There's enough weird people in our world. We need our world to see that there's some normal Christians out there too that care deeply about their soul. And it's not that we do it with the motivation only, like I'm only your friend so that you'll get saved. That's not the right way. It's a deep, genuine care for people. Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1 through 2 says, "Let brotherly love continue, and do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Let brotherly love continue, do not neglect to show hospitality. Here's the reality. It's not a one-time event. It's not just on launch day that we celebrate and we say, "Hey, look, we were hospitable, our job's done." It's a lifestyle that we're living out in our communities, in our workplaces, at the restaurants, at your home with your neighbors. Our entire lives, are we pursuing hospitality? Thankfully, all of the weight and all the pressure of being a great example of this does not rely just on my shoulders, because I'm going to fail just like you guys. I'm going to come home some days after a long day and a stressful day, and I'm going to shut my garage, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to be with my family. And I'm not saying those are bad. That's not sinful. But we have been shown the example. I just got done reading through Matthew, and now we're working through Mark and the Bible reading plan that I'm on. And when you read it continuously like that and you see the life of Jesus, it's so encouraging to think of who he reached out to, who he was passionate about, who he was the most firm with, and who he was the most gracious with. We see time and time again, Jesus would welcome people that were shunned. A tax collector, not liked by the community, would take advantage of people. Crooked, he's pocketing my hard-earned money. Jesus says, "Let me come to your house and have dinner with you." It made the religious people mad, right? It made the Pharisees mad, like, "Hey, do you realize who you're associating with?" Here's the reality. Most of the gospel work that happens doesn't happen from a stage like this. It happens in relationships with the people around you. And that doesn't happen if we're not hospitable. The woman caught in adultery, she's crossed the line. We've got to get rid of her. We've got to stone her. We've got to kill her. Not Jesus. It's not how he operates. A prostitute, who could be so welcoming and loving to such a person? I know who. See, we might look at these big sins and we read these stories and think, gosh, these people's lives were a wreck. They had some stuff going on in their life, but I want you to think back for a moment when you came to Jesus. When you responded to the call of the gospel. He didn't write a list of your sins. He didn't tell you have to have it all together. He didn't say, hey, listen, you got to straighten up before you come to church. He didn't say any of that stuff. He was gracious and he was loving towards you. I want you to bow your heads just for a moment.